Jeff, Hands of Steel Neal, and we got Ian, my wife's boyfriend, said we could order a pizza, Garry. Welcome into Tapping Vegas, brought to you by Better and Green. We have the bets that cash that make Vegas crash. If you need money in a flash, we're making a splash unlike that other trash. We're breaking down the latest clash, Bobby. We're breaking down Alexander Volkanovski versus Ilia Topuria. Last week, though, we made money again. We have not had a losing week. How did we do last week?
Last week, we went up 3 units. So far, we're 11.5 on the year and 45 units of all time. Last week, we went up 3 based off a Bogdan Guskov money line win, and also Rodolfo Vieira was the underdog, I do believe, on the money line. Plus, he also was a pretty sizable favorite to win by submission, which was just baffling to us. But you and I obviously managed to catch on to that and take advantage. And hopefully those of you out there listening and watching took advantage of that pretty bizarre odds making on that one.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. We did great. I love this card even more. I can't wait to get into it. I'm going to let you break down this first one. Who do we have first?
All right, so the first fight we're going to be going over on this stacked pay-per-view main card is going to be Anthony Hernandez versus Roman Kopylov. And this is a pretty exciting fight that at first I was skeptical of as to why it was given a main card slot on a pay-per-view card. But both of these guys, Anthony Hernandez and Roman Kopylov, I don't necessarily want to say they could be championship material in the men's 185-pound division, but they're definitely fun fighters. They're definitely guys who are exciting to watch in 185 and could, potentially hang around the top 15 for a few years to come. So I'm pretty excited to see them matched up against each other. It's a good matchmaking for 2 young prospects in the division. See, who's going to take that next step forward in their UFC career. I've been watching Anthony Hernandez since his Dana White's Contender Series debut back in 2018, I believe. You've heard me go over Kopylov quite a bit since I've started Tapping Vegas with the GM report and also since the article days from last year. So Kopylov is a guy I've already done a lot of coverage for. Anthony Hernandez, not so much. So this fight is really interesting in terms of the betting odds on it for me right now, because right now Anthony Hernandez is a pretty sizable favorite according to DraftKings at a minus 258 to Kopylov's plus 210. And this is the fight where I'm really, really interested in how the odds makers came to those conclusions, because once again, both of these guys are maybe not necessarily championship material, but just analyzing their techniques, their skill, their records, et cetera, I'm not really seeing a clear, advantage or disadvantage between these two guys as so great as to create such a mismatch from a betting perspective. Anthony Hernandez is primarily a guy who has like a really good shot at submissions. Coincidentally enough, he actually holds a pretty impressive submission victory over Rodolfo Vieira, who we covered on last card.
Yeah.
So that's pretty impressive that he was able to sub BJJ black belt of the caliber of Vieira. But Kopylov, in my eyes, definitely has the advantage in the striking department. And it's especially beneficial to Kopylov because thus far, he's actually won a lot of his UFC fights by KO TKO. I was just looking at it, and I believe he's actually only went to decision possibly once in the UFC. Let me double check to be sure of that. But since he's been in the UFC, he's only went to decision once, and that was in 2021 against Albert Duraev, and he lost that, unfortunately. But other than that, all of 2023, he was on a 3-fight straight KO TKO finish run there. Roman Kopylov was. And they also all came in round 2, coincidentally enough. I thought that was a bit odd as well, that all of Kopylov's KO TKO wins last year, all 3 were in the second round. And then he also had one in round 3 that was in 2022. 2021, as I said, was the Duraev loss by decision. He didn't fight in 2020, and in 2019, he lost by sub to Carl Roberson. So other than that, that's really The biggest blemish I see on Kopylov right now that does make me a little hesitant as to his future is it's pretty concerning that he lost to Carl Roberson, a guy who's no longer in the UFC and hasn't been for a little while now, and a guy who's not particularly known as a strong submission threat. But 2019, he's had a lot of time to grow, a lot of time to learn, work on technique, etc. I'm hoping Kopylov has taken that as a learning experience and worked on submission defense, worked on some of his grappling defense, takedown defense, things of that nature, because he's probably definitely going to need it against Hernandez in this fight. I anticipate Hernandez will strike, obviously, if given the opportunity, but he does seem to primarily win by submission, and he actively will find situations to set up submissions when they are presented to him. So even though he does have some KO TKO wins of his own, I'm thinking in a pure striking match, if they're just trying to stand and trade, I'm liking Kopylov's chances, especially since Hernandez is orthodox so far as a southpaw. Kopylov has done his best work, and he has his best tools available to him, such as his body kicks, high kicks, calf kicks, his punches, all of his power punches with the left hand, left leg kicks, things of that nature. They're all available to him based off having an orthodox opponent like Anthony Hernandez. So the only thing that really concerns me is I'm a little worried. I'd be more concerned if he was a southpaw himself, but Anthony Hernandez is not. But Kopylov kind of has a bad habit of walking himself when he circles out in these striking exchanges. It's a good thing because he circles to the left of his orthodox opponent, so he avoids that right hand, which is an orthodox opponent's power hand, obviously. But he leaves himself in doing that open to left hook counters. So that's just my biggest concern, aside from the grappling potential and the sub potential. I just worry that Kopylov potentially could be leaving himself open to some left hook counters, since he loves circling to that left-hand side of all of his orthodox opponents to avoid the right power shot. But other than that, that's not enough to shy me away from Kopylov, especially at the odds, like I said, being as drastic as they are. At plus 210, I love those odds for Kopylov, and considering his recent history of a 3-fight KO TKO win streak, all coming in the second round, funny enough, I'm actually going to go ahead and say that not only is the money line enticing at plus 210, but if you want to put money on Kopylov by KO, TKO, DQ, that is plus 350. So that's also very juicy and very tantalizing, considering you have a guy with a history, very recent history, of having round 2 KO, TKOs, and has only been to decision once in his career in the UFC since 2019. What do you think, Ben?
Very good breakdown, Bobby. And I think that we're seeing this fight very similar. Kopylov, very dangerous standing, and his wrestling game is not great. His grappling game is not great. Really good at working the body and a very good understanding of foot placement, angles, body positioning while standing. So I think that he definitely has the advantage there. Anthony Hernandez, though, I think he has decent wrestling. He's super tough. That's the thing. I mean, this guy is about as tough as they come. He's beat really good competition. I was looking at his record. He's beat guys like Barrow, Vieira, and then Allen, who are all big names in that division. He leaves big openings, though, and that's going to be where Kopylov, he's going to have a chance there. He's going to have a chance to catch Hernandez. As far as method goes, I'm trying to look that up right now, actually. With Hernandez, he's got such a high price, but looking at it, it's about a $54,000 purse right now over on Pickett. Hernandez has 42% of the bets, so this is actually pretty split. More people on the Kopylov side, but he's getting 72% of the money. So that means that there's a lot of people hedging on Hernandez here. And with Hernandez, I agree with you. This feels like a very even fight. Maybe not like the Volkanovski Topuria, the really, really close, but 250 and 210 seem really high, and I don't know the reason for that, except trying to get people on the Kopylov side, maybe, and not on the Hernandez side, and people aren't biting and just throwing more money on Hernandez. Um, I need to look up some of the methods right now. Hernandez, TKO 400, submission 180, decision 275. This is tough. I'm going to be on the Hernandez side. I think Hernandez wins. I don't know though. I don't think he gets the knockout. So I know the 400 is juicy, but I almost want to say Anthony Hernandez by decision at the plus 275 because I can see this being a lot like I think the last like Evolov fight and the Moicano fight where Hernandez like nobody gets knocked out and Hernandez just controls the fight. It ends up being kind of boring and it just wins based on control.
That's definitely a possibility for sure. If especially if Hernandez does try to go with a grappling heavy game plan. It's been a while since Kopylov's been tested in that regard, so that would be interesting to see.
I think that'd be a smart decision by him too, because I think if he's just gonna stand and bang with Kopylov, I don't know if he's gonna win that.
Yeah, 100%. If it's a purely striking affair, I think Kopylov definitely has the decided edge in that regard.
Yeah. Next fight we're gonna talk about is Merab Deval. I'm gonna call him Merab D versus Henry Cejudo. Just forewarning, I've always been a Cejudo guy. He's kind of back when I was really into. I'm starting to get really into UFC again, especially with this show. Back in the heyday, back when I was in high school, so I was personally wrestling. Henry was like my dude, man. He was like one of the guys I just love so much. World class wrestler, Olympic gold medalist, great movement. I don't have any gas concerns because Cejudo, I mean, every fight he fights is like a 5-round fight, and this is going to be a 3-round fight. So I don't have any concerns about him. The thing that worries me about Cejudo is his hesitant fists. It just seems like he's a little bit more hesitant to pull the trigger, whereas I'm looking at Merab. Talk about no gas concerns. This dude, I don't know if he has a gas tank. This dude's just he's like an electric fighter, man. He charges up before you don't have to worry about gas. Unbelievably tough too. I mean, I think I saw one fight. It looked like he went out, but the dude was able to keep going, stay in it. Goes running around just eating punches, and ended up winning the fight. I believe in the second. What stands out to me though is he is very high grappling. As in his last fight, he had 49 takedown attempts. But did the dude have 49 takedowns? No. Why? Because I feel like his grappling gets sloppy. And I think against a guy like Cejudo, I think that's going to be a big problem. He's either going to have to slow it down and really take his shots or keep doing what he's doing. I just think Cejudo is going to be able to defend it. And looking at Merab, he's super decision heavy too. I don't know if this goes to full 3. I just don't see him outworking Henry. And I mean, absolutely, that's the way. If he is going to win, that's what he has to do. I just don't think his wrestling is up to par. And Henry Cejudo is, I have right now to plus 180. So he's a pretty nice underdog. He just came back out of retirement, had a fight, lost. So if this was his first fight out of retirement, I'd be more worried about the rust. I feel like he got that rust knocked off. He's ready to go. Merab on like an 8-fight win streak or whatever. Dude's been absolutely lights out. I think this might be a road bump for him. Both of these guys are fantastic. I really like both of these guys. I'm going to side with Henry. Looking at their split right now, it's about a $40,000 purse at the moment. Over on Pickett. Bet percentage, I've got 16% of the bets and only, was that about 6? It doesn't even show his percentage because Merab got 93.8%. So about 6% of the money on Cejudo. I don't know. I think I'm going to take the chance. I'm going to take the chance on him. What do you think, Bobby?
This is a tough one for me, but at the same time, I have to remind myself that this isn't 2020 anymore, unfortunately. It's
Yeah.
not even 2019. And so, there's a lot of talk about Kamaru Usman being the CEO of EPO. I really think that's Merab Dvalishvili. I really think that guy's the CEO of EPO. And it's funny that you mentioned how he set the record for takedowns in his last fight against Peter Yan, RIP Peter Yan, a guy I'm pretty high on, but We know how that goes. Anyway, so you said 49 takedowns in that fight, correct?
Yep.
Do you know how many takedowns, and you don't get credit for this, I'm just bringing it up to showcase a point. Do you know how many takedowns of those 49 Peter Yan defended?
Probably like, what, 38 of them?
38 exactly. So he defended 38 takedowns. So what does this mean? You're asking yourself this at home. You're scratching your head. Bobby, what does it all mean? The numbers, Mason. What do they mean? It means this. Khabib Nurmagomedov got a lot of crap. Islam Makhachev gets crap for being boring fighters who just, crawl on your legs, crotch sniff if you're Jorge Masvidal. Excuse me, whatever you want to call it. Crotch sniffing, leg humping, whatever. Here's the point, though. Yes, they attempt a lot of takedowns. Islam Makhachev, Khabib, those guys attempt a lot of takedowns. They also succeed on a lot of takedowns. Khabib set the record before Merab with takedowns against, I believe it wasn't Gleason Tebow. It was some other guy. I forget who it was right now off the top of my head. But the point is, when he set the takedown record, he actually had takedowns. Merab is an entirely different vein of grappler where, yeah, he will get the takedown and he'll get credited for it and you'll get up. But the problem is he literally point fights, it seems like, instead of like karate boxing point fighting like a Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. He's like the grappling equivalent of just point fighting. Like you get up from a takedown after 5 seconds, it doesn't matter. He still scored the takedown. All the judges know is that it's secured, it counts. So all they see is that 49 or whatever the final number ends up being, and he still wins the fight. When he fought Jose Aldo, it was a decision, like all of his wins except the one over Marlon Moraes that was his only KO against a guy who had already had a shot chin by that point. He had no chin left. He was getting KO'd left and right. In the words of McGregor, a gust of wind and he does the chicken dance. But Merab did 15 takedown attempts against Jose Aldo, didn't secure a single one, did not register a single takedown in 15 attempts, but he was the busier guy over 15 minutes and took home the unanimous decision win. So it's just ironic that we've come full circle to you don't know what you have until it's gone. Coming up, Khabib and Islam were the guys who were boring. They never finished fights, even though they finished quite a few fights by sub, KO, TKO, whatever, very active, exciting guys. And now Merab's coming up through the ranks of 135 at bantamweight. And the dude is just point fighting by grappling. And it doesn't matter if you get up after 5 seconds. He's literally got the cardio to keep point fighting and keep just throwing strikes. Once again, doesn't matter if the strikes are doing damage. It doesn't matter what percentage of force they're hitting with, et cetera, et cetera. He's winning fights purely based off just being busy, just throwing, just volume is all it is. And it's insanely boring. It really is. And there's a lot of you out there who don't like to hear it. I'm sorry, just like you don't like living in your mom's basement, you're not going to like hearing that Merab is a boring guy. And don't get me wrong, I can appreciate the skill and the drugs it takes to be able to have that kind of pace over 15 minutes, to be able to attempt 49 takedowns and not even secure, even half of those and still look like at the end of 15 minutes of 49 attempted takedowns and God knows how many significant strikes and just strike attempts, and you don't even look like you barely taken a breath. I get that it is difficult. I get that it does take skill, et cetera, and I do respect that. But I'm not going to sit here and pretend to you like when I hear that there's a Merab Dvalishvili fight that I'm salivating to watch it and tune in. I'm just not. So all this to say, Henry Cejudo is a legend, as he will be quick to tell you himself. He's an Olympic gold medalist, for Christ's sake. I mean, come on now. So Henry Cejudo is a great fighter, and he got out at the right time when he first retired in 2020. He could have rode off into the sunset. And yeah, as time went on, he falls victim to what everybody does and the what ifs and the speculation starts about, well, if he would have kept fighting, he would have lost. This guy would have beat him, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. But eventually, over time, that goes away because it's just speculation. It's just like when people talk about, well, John Jones would have lost to this guy, or whatever the case may be. Point is, Cejudo got out at the right time in 2020, and then he should have just rode off into the sunset after he beat TJ Dillashaw like a scolded dog. And that guy, the real CEO of EPO, once again, the drug that keeps getting mentioned, TJ Dillashaw, pissed hot for EPO, and he had already lost the belt to Cejudo by knockout to add insult to injury. And so Cejudo defended the belt once, rode off into the sunset. He made a mistake, I feel like, by overplaying his hand, and he thought the UFC would chase him as a result of that retirement, and they didn't. So when he realized how quick they were to move on and how they essentially, didn't chase after him after he retired after beating Dominic Cruz in 2020, he couldn't just stay away. He couldn't just accept the fact that, they weren't going to give him what he wanted, be it increased pay, super fights, whatever it was, I forget at the time he was looking for when he retired after beating Dom. They weren't going to give it to him, but he wasn't content. So he came back last year in May, and it was controversial apparently, and it was once again a boring fight, and it's been his only fight since 2020. So pretty big gap here in fighting. 3 years that he went, and then last year lost a decision to Aljamain Sterling. So I think he should have just stayed retired is what I'm getting at. I think he should have just let it go. Should have just enjoyed the illustrious career and all the, accolades he had already had as an Olympic gold medalist, as a, bantamweight champion who made a successful defense against another legend in Dominic Cruz, that type of thing, flyweight champion, also another accolade he's had. But Aljamain Sterling is a teammate and training partner, very close training partner of Merab Dvalishvili. So Aljamain just got done training and preparing for Cejudo last year and beat him, even though it was by split decision, and that was a five round fight, so 25 minutes, and he beat him. Now Dvalishvili is, like I said, a training partner and close friend of Sterling. So this is the second time that their camp has had an opportunity to prepare for and get used to game planning for Henry Cejudo. And Aljamain Sterling does not have the gas tank, does not have the effective cardio, does not have the pressure, et cetera, all the accolades and attributes that Merab has. And I hate to do MMA math, but this is pretty close math here, considering the guys are from the same gym and all that. But if you have basically a new and improved and even better version of Aljamain Sterling fighting this same fight against Henry Cejudo, I think it's going to be a more convincing win. And it's going to be by decision. Let's not kid ourselves here. And it's going to be a boring, ugly fight, probably with another high takedown attempt. But I just can't really say anything with confidence to really get me on board with Henry Cejudo. From a personal standpoint, would I love for him to win? Hell yes. I would love for him to win and end this nightmare that is, EPO cardio takedown attempts and, pitter patter little strikes and all that. I would love for it to happen. But the theme of this card as we continue to go on is going to be, I try not to let my personal feelings about fighters get in the way of my realism and my betting analysis and technical analysis, etc. And this is going to be the first fight where my heart wants Cejudo to win, but I'm not going to put my money, and I'm not going to want you to put your money on Cejudo. And even though Dvalishvili's at minus 225, Cejudo's at plus 185, and Dvalishvili by decision is a minus 135, none of these are going to make you money. I'm not going to gas you up like everybody else and try to act like it's going to be a moneymaker. This fight, it's pretty ugly. It's pretty bad. But, I mean, what can you say? What can you do when you pretty much know what the outcome's going to be? So, Dvalishvili by decision at minus 135. He's a minus 225 on money line. I mean, to try to take the edge off, I'm almost laughing suggesting it, but hey, why not? Plus 1,600 for sub. I wouldn't hate it. So I wouldn't hate it. Plus 1,600 by sub. KO TKO plus 550. Marlon Moraes is the only guy he's KO TKO'd. Could he do it to Cejudo? Cejudo's 37. Cejudo's not got a lot of miles, so I can't really say that. Can't really say his, chin's been tested, but I wouldn't call you absolutely out of your mind if you even wanted to go Dvalishvili plus 550 KO TKO just to kind of take the edge off that minus 225 money line.
Breaking down this fight, I could not tell. I think this is the only one that we've covered that I could not tell if what I was saying and when I was picking my person, if I was really believing what I was, if my heart was dictating what my head was thinking. Because in my head, I just see it like Henry's so much better wrestler. The other dude, exactly what you said. Rob's just so much volume. I think that Henry can, just like I said with Hernandez, just control the fight. I don't know if that's right at all. Because everything you said, I absolutely agree with too. I think this card is going to be absolutely excellent.
Yeah, it's going to be a really tough fight. It all goes back to, I think Henry Cejudo will defend the takedown. I do believe and agree he is the better wrestler, but the bottom line is at the end of the day, it's not going to matter. It's not going to, don't just like Peter Yan didn't get points for defending 38 takedowns.
Right.
Call it a flaw, call it you hate it, whatever. Unfortunately, right now, as it stands, that's how the judging criteria is determined. And it only matters how many takedowns you get and you attempt. Defending takedowns awards no points, unfortunately. And though I personally disagree with that, especially when you defend 38 damn takedowns out of 49 attempts, I feel like you should get something at least. That's how the rules are set up right now. It's not changing. So that's just where Henry's going to find himself. He'll probably defend 50 of the 60 attempts, but all judges are going to see is 60 attempts, and he got like 10 of them. So,
right. And I heard somebody say this quote. I forgot who it was, but that it's at the end of the day, it's not a wrestling match; it's an MMA fight. So that's exactly what you're saying. Yeah.
Right.
All right. Have fun with this next fight, man.
Oh, is this Ian Garry versus Jeff Neal?
It is.
Yeah. So this is going to be another fight where my heart and my desires want the outcome to be vastly different than what I know, unfortunately, the reality is going to be. So Jeff Neal and Ian Garry. I'm not even going to rag on Ian Garry anymore. The guy's a victim. I'm just going to get to the facts. Ian Garry, the problem with Ian Garry is in all of his fights I watched last time, I studied for him and we prepared for him when he was supposed to fight Luque, which he pulled out of, and then proceeded to take a picture of him crying on like the doctor's examination table and your local medical clinic, probably while getting a gonorrhea exam because of his wife. Anyway, so Ian Garry was basically in a lot of the footage I was studying of his, very much getting pressured against the fence by almost everybody he fought. It was very easy to back him up against the cage and put him in a position where he was limited in the height and reach advantage that he usually carries in his fights, and limited in his ability to throw like his high kick that he favors. He's got a really nice high kick that he throws, really nice right straight that he throws, things of that nature. So people have tried to game plan for him accordingly to take those things away from him. They have tried to pressure him, which is always good, especially for a guy that does throw as many head kicks and just various kicks in general as he throws. You definitely want to crowd the kicker and try to deny him as much space as possible. But to his credit, Ian Garry was also really adept at finding ways to safely circle out and get off the cage and reestablish his distance, reestablish his range, his jab, and all those tools that work for him. And thus far, he's been successful. I will also give him credit and say that in his last fight with Neal Magny, I also started to show signs of him evolving and him being the guy doing the pressuring instead of getting pressured. Now, if only he could apply some of these same principles to his bedroom and his marriage, maybe he'd have a little bit better life. But I digress. The point is, Jeff Neal is a very formidable test for Ian Garry. I will say that. This is going to be one of his toughest tests and his biggest challenge to date. And Jeff Neal, not that long ago, gave Shavkat Rakhmonov, a guy we're very high on this show, one hell of a fight. He really took it to Shavkat and gave Shavkat his biggest test to date and very narrowly lost by rear naked choke, I believe, in the third round of the 3-round fight. So this is a tough one. Jeff Neal was also kind of a dark horse of the division for a long time, a guy I was really, really high on personally. Guys like Jack Slack were very high on him for a while, etc. A guy very highly touted for a while in the division that unfortunately I don't really know how or why he fell off the face of the earth and kind of lost a lot of those skills and that talent and etc. But he did, and it's unfortunate. So I don't know. It's tough. And another thing is Jeff Neal is a southpaw, which might make things interesting, add a different dynamic to it. And he does have some power, and he does also make really good use of the southpaw double, where he will start jabbing you with his right hand, the jab hand for a southpaw, and then you'll anticipate the jab and you'll get kind of fixated on that. And then when you're not looking for it, he'll throw up like the right high kick, like that same side high kick. And then you'll get knocked out or you'll get stunned. And then you have to worry about two things coming at you, either the right hand jab or the right high kick. And it just kind of overwhelms you. And that's how he ended up knocking out Frank Camacho. So that could potentially pose a wrinkle in the game to Ian Garry. But another thing that makes me lean towards Ian Garry in this is just like Shavkat managed to eventually kind of take advantage of clinch situations with Jeff Neal. I think Ian Garry's definitely going to take advantage of clinch situations with Jeff Neal, just like Shavkat did, because Ian Garry, it's already a core game plan of his to clinch a lot and to use that length to his advantage in the clinch situation and the height that he has to just kind of wear on guys and just lay on them and kind of pressure them, especially since he added that element to his game after the Magny fight. So I don't think Jeff Neal is really going to find any respite in the clinch. If he tries it, I think Ian Garry's going to have the advantage there. I think overall Ian Garry's going to have the striking advantage. I don't think either one of them's going to grapple. The extent of their grappling will be cage work because of the clinch, but I don't really think that it's going to result in any meaningful takedowns or trips or anything of that nature. So overall, it's tough. And once again, my heart and everything in me wants Jeff Neal to win and Jeff Neal to make this a dogfight, especially after the whole Ian Garry wearing the mugshot bull crap that he's pulling, being like a dollar store Conor McGregor. But I just think Ian Garry does have, to his credit, I hate the guy, but I can't deny what I see in front of me. He does have some talent. He does seem to be actively evolving. He does seem to be ascending. Jeff Neal, unfortunately, is descending and declining. So, yeah, I'm going to pick Ian Garry on this. Minus 230, he's not giving you a good money line. Plus 190 for Jeff Neal looks tantalizing, but as I said, I feel like it's a setup. I do like how Garry by KO, TKO, DQ is a plus 250. So that'll take the edge off the money line. I do think this is a fight where he can get the KO, TKO. Subs plus 800, that's tantalizing. I don't think he's going to get a sub. Don't foresee, as I said, grappling playing much role in this fight. Plus 140 by decision is not bad either. It is a three 5-minute rounds, so 15-minute fight. Neal is tough, but he did get choked out by Shavkat late in the third. I'm still going to go Garry by KO, TKO just because you get a better value. I get decisions safer. But I'm gonna. This is a fight where I'm willing to take a little bit more risk on. And once again, since this is a guy I doesn't like, that should tell you a lot that I am still betting on him for KO TKO. So Garry to take the edge off by KO TKO at plus 250 right now on DraftKings. That's where I'm going. What about you, Ben?
Dude, I must be drinking the Kool-Aid this week. Then it might not look too hot on the end of the episode graphic, but I think we need to start using their like nicknames more too, because we got Jeff Hands of Steel Neal, and we got Ian, my wife's boyfriend, said we could order a pizza Garry. Neal, the dude, he nearly outlasted Shavkat. Like, that really impressed me, because I think Shavkat is one of the best in that whole division right now, I think. Neal, really good striking. He wants to stand, so he's going to be standing banging. We know that. Great takedown defense, too. Looking at Ian Garry, what goes great with pizza? Soda. If you go buy a 12-pack of soda, Bobby, what does that soda come in?
If I buy a 12-pack of soda, I'm a can guy personally.
You're a can guy personally. Well, isn't that interesting that Ian Garry's 13-0 and only has one real fight because he fought 12 cans? Oh, yeah. That Neil Magny was the only person he's actually fought so far. All the other ones, as far as I'm concerned, Ian Garry's going in 1-0, and I think Neil's gonna knock him the fuck out.
I hope so.
I'm gonna put it right now. Ian Garry, he's got fast kicks, but poor strike defense, and he will eat punches. He ran from Luque. Let's be honest. We did all that research. We talked about it. We ended up putting in more work for this Luque Garry fight than Ian Garry did. Dude's a punk, and he's gonna get punked in this fight. I'm gonna have Garry for KO. You can do Garry money line at plus 190. Could go to decision. Neal, if I say Garry, I apologize. Neal is plus 190 is what I have right now to win by knockout. Plus 350. Plus 350. I think Ian Garry's gonna get humbled.
You definitely get the biggest balls award for this show right now. That's for sure. I'll give you that. You got balls, kid.
Thank you, sir.
I like the way you think.
83% of people would agree with you because the money and the bets are pretty heavily on Ian Garry. It looks like Neal's got 16% of the bets, 12% of the money, so that's some sharp money coming in on Garry. But dude, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I'm rolling with Neal.
I don't blame you, man. I hope it happens. I just, my heart can't take much more disappointment from being a long-term MMA fan.
Well, let's talk about this next fight I'm super excited about. It's Robert Whittaker versus Paulo Costa, the inflated balloon animal. Another fight, pretty high odds. Whittaker is minus in the 200s somewhere. I don't know when you're watching this right now. I've got minus 250. Paulo Costa plus 205. Pretty similar range, pretty similar in age. What I see from Whittaker is he's light on his feet. He stays out of range. I think he's got the grappling edge. He's got a great gas tank. He does have low hands, though, but I think Whittaker has a great resume. He's fought guys, and win or lose, you get that experience. So he's fought guys like Dricus, who is the current champion, Adesanya twice, who was the champion, Vittori, Cannonier, Till, and Romero. Paulo Costa, no striking defense from that guy. He's got kickboxer fighting style. He just tries to outstrength dudes. Just a showboater, pretty boy. I think Whittaker is a fighter. I think Costa, I think he's doing it for a paycheck and for the fame. I just really think Whittaker is going to take it to him. It could absolutely be a decision. I probably would go decision with Whittaker. I just don't know if he's able to knock out Costa or get the sub. Costa, he's just not talented to me, and I don't think he's just going to be able to outmuscle and bully Whittaker. What do you think?
I think come Saturday night we will all be condoms, as Paulo Costa himself said, the eraser man, the rubber man. So what I think is this. So Paulo Costa, I wonder if he's going to show up. That's the first thing I wonder. It's been a very
Right.
long time since the guy last fought. He's coming off a very long layoff. His last fight was a win over Luke Rockhold, which is not much of an accomplishment in this day and age, because when he last fought Luke Rockhold, that was back in 2022, and that was a decision win in August of 2022 against Luke Rockhold. Now, Luke Rockhold is a legend and all these other things that I don't need to waste breath saying, but in 2022, he's a shell of his former self, and he's not even in MMA anymore. He's doing bare knuckle boxing, and I should unfortunately tell you all that there is needed to know about Luke Rockhold's career and trajectory since, losing to Paulo back in August of 2022. So before that, he only fought once in 2021. And in 2020 was when Israel Adesanya defeated him. So Paulo Costa is a guy I was really high on for a very long time. Since his debut in 2017, I pretty much had watched almost all of his fights live. I had the privilege of being able to do that, just kind of following along with his career as he made his ascension. And in the words of Jack Slack, shout out to him, he is without a doubt the juiciest slot on the roster. If you think he's not on drugs, you're merely arguing that he has not failed a test, which in and of itself is really remarkable. That as much as USADA has tested him over the years that USADA was active throughout his career, they were only able to catch him for using an IV, and they only gave him a slap on the wrist for it. And it just kind of feels like catching Al Capone and all the FBI ever could charge him with was tax evasion. It's pretty impressive, actually, all things considered. So let's get into the meat and potatoes of the issue, though. Paulo Costa, aside from inactivity, has not evolved much in his UFC career. Now, when he was on The Ultimate Fighter with Chael Sonnen and Vanderlei Silva on The Ultimate Fighter Brazil, that was when he went under his biggest transformation, because on The Ultimate Fighter, when he was being coached by those two gentlemen on that show and learning from them and all that, he started off as a guy who was trying to use his BJJ, was trying to use his wrestling, and it resulted in him being just like a really muscle-bound guy who would just completely exhaust himself chasing very sloppy takedowns. And it got him surprisingly pretty far on the show to the finals or semifinals, I do believe. I'm about to look it up while I continue talking. So it's not like it wasn't something that took him pretty far on the show, because it definitely did. The problem is, yeah, it took him all the way to the quarterfinal round, being that, juiced up, sloppy takedown chasing guy who for the whole 15 minutes would just go after it nonstop. I mean, he got a guillotine choke finish in round 2 on his first fight in the elimination round of the show, but then lost a split decision. So it's not like he got completely destroyed in the quarterfinals. Then after that, he went back to the regional scene for a bit, then came into the UFC. So in between the Ultimate Fighter and making his way officially into the UFC, the biggest transformation he underwent was he started to become a guy who, ever since the Ultimate Fighter, I've never seen him even attempt a takedown. I've never seen him even use his wrestling or use any grappling in any capacity. And he became just a very beefy, power punching kickboxing guy, as you kind of alluded to. And that was the best transformation he could have made, because that led him to TKO Gareth McClellan. Not an impressive win, but I'm just going over what it led to his career doing. Lawaje Bambose, once again, not impressive. Johnny Hendricks at that time, not impressive. Uriah Hall was decent. Amazing fight with Yoel Romero. That was a decision. But before Yoel Romero fight, which was an amazing back and forth, exciting fight, even though it was a decision, he still knocked Yoel down a few times. That's an impressive accomplishment in his own right. But before that, he was on a 4-fight TKO KO win in the UFC. So clearly it paid off for him to make that switch until he met Israel Adesanya, and we know how that went and how embarrassing that was and how he got brutally finished in the second round and had nothing to offer. What concerns me is even though he's only had 2 fights since then, that was back in 2020. So along with the inactivity, I've not seen him change that style. Marvin Vettori, that was an amazing, great, legendary fight, back and forth, highly entertaining, even though Costa lost by unanimous decision. Great fight. If you haven't seen it, highly encourage you to watch it. But he didn't show anything new in his game. He showed the exact same Paulo that had made his way to Israel Adesanya and had been defeated. The Luke Rockhold fight, I did see bits and pieces of that fight. Admittedly, I've not seen the full thing, but I've seen highlights. And I did see some half-assed grappling exchanges, primarily with Paulo on top in those. But that's not enough to give me any type of confidence that he's made it a clear core part of his new and improved game plan in any way. Because even though Luke Rockhold was a very adept grappler and a very talented one and a very good BJJ artist, this is once again the Luke who's a shell of himself in 2022. So it's not really holding much weight that he was able to do that. All this to say, I don't even think Robert's going to try to press a grappling advantage that I feel that he clearly has, because he's the same way. I hear all the time that he's like an Australian Games champion wrestler or some crazy shit like that, but I don't see the guy ever use it. I mean, he occasionally will defend a takedown, but we just recently saw DDP do a Toshi pass on him and smash the guy and actually finish him for the first time in a while. So I'm a little bit concerned, and this is definitely not where I thought I was going to go when the gun was on me and I was forced to make a decision. I did not anticipate making this decision. This was completely on the fly as of a few minutes ago. With Paulo Costa at a plus 205 and Whittaker at a minus 250, I was not thinking I was ever going to say these words. They were going to come out of my mouth. This is maybe my Kool-Aid moment. I think maybe Paulo Costa gets it done. I do, because up until that DDP fight, I was very, very high on Whittaker. Like, as high as I am on DDP and as a fan of Dricus as I am, and I still am, and all that jazz, I thought Dricus had nothing to offer Whittaker. I thought he was easily going to get destroyed, blah, 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 blah. And it was a complete and total opposite. And Whittaker easily was destroyed by Dricus du Plessis, and DDP smashed him with ease. And it was very sad to see. And it makes me now wonder, as I was doing research for this fight, it has to come eventually for everyone at some time. And even though his nickname's the Reaper, I wonder if the Reaper has finally come for Robert Whittaker. He's taken a lot of damage. He's been in a lot of fights with the likes of Yoel Romero. Those fights alone with Yoel have probably taken so much, off of his chin, off of his ability to take shots, withstand shots, etc. All that damage accumulates. Getting smashed by DDP accumulates. He's not getting any younger. He's got a lot of miles. Paulo, yeah, I was taking originally the approach of all the inactivity hurts. Maybe it's reinvigorating him. Maybe I'll look at it from that angle. Maybe the inactivities made him rejuvenated, excited. Maybe he has, doubtful, but I'll say it. Maybe he's worked on new things in the meantime. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of question marks that, since he hasn't fought in 2 years, we don't really know what he's going to look like. But unfortunately, for better or for worse, we have seen Robert Whittaker recently. And I'm kind of sad because it makes me wonder if it's the end of an era at middleweight for him. And maybe he should be strongly considering retirement, as he already has been for a few years now. Maybe he should enjoy his time with his family, his health, things of that nature. I wish him all the best. But plus 205, that's a pretty tantalizing money line for Costa. And like I said, maybe I'm taking the bait. Maybe I'm an idiot and a dumbass, and I'll look that way come Saturday. But this is the type of guy Whittaker struggles with. Up until Adesanya, Whittaker primarily struggled with big, beefy guys like Yoel Romero, who just punch your head off and just pressure the hell out of you. And that's what Paulo does. He's a Terminator. He walks forward. He is able to withstand punishment, as his fight with Vettori demonstrated to us. He is able to just keep coming forward as much as he can, pressure you. And that's going to take away a lot of tools that Robert Whittaker likes. Robert Whittaker likes his karate boxing blitzes. He actually makes karate boxing interesting, unlike some other people at this stage of their careers. like Wonder Boy. I like him, but dude hasn't been entertaining for a while. Whittaker blitzes in, uses that right high kick, that right hand, kind of like that. Except it's like an orthodox double for him because he's orthodox, I believe, in his stance primarily. Uses things like that to just wear away guys and take that away. And yes, I know Whittaker is also good at taking those tools away from big, heavy power punchers. Like he made Jared Cannonier look silly and absolutely dismantled him. So I understand the road goes both ways. But just kind of a feeling taking over me as the show's progressed and I've been doing the analysis. Why not plus 205 money line for Costa? And if you really want to get bold and ballsy, KO TKO for Paulo is at plus 400 right now. I would be safe and just stick with the money line. Robert is tough. He is durable. And yeah, he could be at the tail end of his career, but I just want to play it safe with the odds with that big of a disparity and just go with the plus 205 money line. That way, I mean, what's the worst that could happen? What are you really losing if this fight doesn't, pan out for Costa? The Marab and Henry Cejudo fight, to me, that just seems like such a clear cut Marab. The Ian Garry Neal fight just looks like such a clear cut Garry, but this and the Kopylov Hernandez fight are like the biggest so far. Kind of muddled ones to me, where the outcome really just isn't that glaringly obvious. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, absolutely, man. I can't believe that this is the first time the first four fights were completely on opposite sides. With Whittaker, you pretty much have to pick a method if you're taking him. You could take the 250, but I looked at the double method because I don't think it's going to be a submission. So if Whittaker did a knockout with the decision double method, it's the exact same as his money line. It's the exact same as his money line. So they're telling you that the submission is not coming. So
Yeah.
I mean, I agree with you. I don't hate it if you're just doing money line. Paulo Costa is such a better deal. Like we were saying, these are tough fights. Maybe the toughest one is the championship fight, man. The main event of the card. What do you think?
Yes, this is tough, but the odds have recently moved in a way to where I feel once again a little bit more confident about it. Excuse me. So we have Alexander Volkanovski versus Ilya Topuria. So this is going to be for the 145-pound men's featherweight championship, and this is going to be a 5-round fight. Each round 5 minutes, 25 minutes, and it's the main event of this pay-per-view card. And this one was, when I first checked the odds Monday, I believe, originally very close. I want to say at minus 120 to minus 115, somewhere around there, that neighborhood. Since then, Volkanovski is now minus 125. Topuria is plus 105. So a lot more shifting of the odds on this. But all things considered, I still think the odds should be even more drastic on this. This is one of the few. This is one of the few fights in MMA where I would normally say I do believe the odds should be a bigger gap here. And this is the biggest fight on the whole card where my head really wants one guy to win and my heart just wants another guy to win type thing. It's really split on who I think's going to win and who I want to win in the worst way of all the fights on this card. And I want Topuria to win. And throughout the week, I was actually very high on Topuria. I really thought he could get it done. And then as I started digging into the tape and kind of studying and reading up, once again, I can't give enough credit to Jack Slack. His article about the V-step and the pivot he did on Topuria really helped me think about this fight and kind of analyze things and do some research. After that, after watching tape, after all the research, I now think Volkanovski is going to win. And kind of here's how I arrived to that conclusion, regrettably so, unfortunately. I think there's the intangibles. I talk about tangibles and intangibles when it comes to predicting fights and doing analysis. The intangible for this is people are really discounting Volkanovski. They're really low on him after that Makhachev head kick KO loss that he recently sustained. in his attempt to get the 155-pound belt that failed. They're discounting him because of that, and they're also really high on what Topuria was just able to do to Josh Emmett. And while that is very impressive and a very advanced accomplishment and a huge feather in his cap, this is giving me shades of when Yair Rodriguez made Josh Emmett look silly, and then he got the title shot off that to face Volkanovski for a 145-pound belt. And we all know how silly Volkanovski made him look. So while it is deserved that Josh Emmett is a very good litmus test and a very good elite gatekeeper to kind of make the determination at 145 pounds who gets to challenge Volk for the belt, we've already seen Yair Rodriguez make him look silly, and then Volk made him look silly. Volk made Yair look silly. My gut's just telling me we're going to see the same thing with Topuria. Topuria made Emmett look silly, and Emmett just brutally flatlined. Unfortunately, Bryce Mitchell, a guy I really like and a guy I'm a big fan of, proving once again his career's not over yet. He's still got some left in the tank, and that's great and all. But just because Topuria was able to, withstand the onslaught and really make him look silly, I think it's going to be the same thing of Volkanovski's now going to have his fun with Topuria, unfortunately. And one of the main reasons why I think that, besides the intangibles of, people being down on Volkanovski because of the Islam fight, people being, overly hyped on Topuria because of the Emmett win, it's also kind of like right now Topuria is undefeated. And this also reminds me in the history of the 145-pound division of another guy who was undefeated and had a shot at the long reigning king of 145 pound before Volkanovski, Max Holloway and Brian Ortega. That fight, a lot of people thought was going to be a really close competitive fight. I watched it live and it was a brutal beatdown. And Max Holloway gave Brian Ortega his first loss. And it was just absolutely very sad to see that Ortega just had nothing to offer Max Holloway. And just my gut with those intangibles is telling me this could be the same thing for Topuria. Very reminiscent of that Ortega Holloway fight. And also there's the tangibles in that MMA is about what are your strengths? How can you amplify those strengths? How can you disguise your weaknesses? How can you identify your opponent's strengths, mitigate those strengths, and increase their weaknesses? Everything that Topuria does well, because you can't do all things well in MMA. As much as people try to game plan, they try to prepare, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. You can only work with as much as you can your skill set and work on refining your skill set and once again trying to take away the other opponent's skill set. It's all about how do you amplify your strengths and mitigate their strengths and all that I just mentioned. And so for Topuria, that V-step that he uses and that pivot and those entries that he used and showcased so wonderfully against Josh Emmett to make Josh Emmett hit air, those are things that Volkanovski is already used to countering. He's already used to being faced with those. And the tools that he has in terms of especially his kicking arsenal at his disposal is really what I think is going to play the biggest role in this. So Topuria taking a boxing heavy approach is great. It's beautiful to watch, and it sets him up for a lot of really good KO TKO wins and just impressive knock on ass victories. But it also leaves him very heavy on his left leg since he's orthodox as his primarily plant leg. That left leg's forward. So he's going to leave himself, like he has throughout numerous times in his previous fights, very open to calf kicks, which Volkanovski throws a lot of calf kicks. It's going to leave him open to some head kicks, some higher kicks. Volkanovski throws those higher kicks. He himself, as a victim of a high kick KO, is going to probably be hell-bent on trying to incorporate that in his arsenal. Sometimes the best thing to get a fighter to incorporate new tools into their toolbox is being a victim of something. And I think him being a victim of that head kick is going to make him kind of hell-bent on using head kicks more, especially against a guy so prone to them as Topuria. And we've already seen a far lesser fighter in the form of Jai Herbert almost flatline Topuria early in his career with that high kick that Topuria is unfortunately just doing a very poor job of defending and leaving himself open to. So I think there's going to be a lot of kicking on Volkanovski's part if he's smart. Calf kicks are going to wear on Topuria. He's not doing a very good job of checking those body kicks, and then eventually I foresee a high kick finishing the fight, honestly. And that's kind of surprising, seeing as how Volkanovski's not really been finishing fights lately. He did against Yair. That was a KO TKO, I do believe. So all this to say, and when it comes to grappling, don't get me wrong, Topuria is a very good grappler, very good at BJJ, Greco-Roman base. Originally, primarily was a grappler when he first started MMA. I think as well-rounded and as like a jack of all trades as Topuria is, I think it's one of those cases where Volkanovski's just kind of a master at things. And yeah, he's well-rounded and he's kind of good all around, but Volkanovski's like very glaring strengths are going to kind of trump that well-roundedness. And yeah, even though Topuria can hold his own in grappling, I think Volk's going to be just a little bit better. Even though Topuria is a very gifted striker and has very good boxing, I think Volkanovski's going to be just a little bit better. And all this to say, I really think, all things considered, the odds are only this close because Volkanovski is coming off such a brutal loss, unfortunately, at a higher weight class. And he's going to win this fight, and he's going to be really obnoxious because I am not a fan at all of Volkanovski and any city kickboxing guys. And he's probably going to be like, "Oi, mate, why don't you let me try to get that 155 title again after I just got my ass kicked?" And it's just going to be annoying, and everybody's going to slob on his knob and whatever. But Volkanovski's going to win. The odds should be a lot greater to reflect that gap that just exists in my mind that is so unfortunately severe between the two. Because I'm begging for Topuria to win, and God, I want to be wrong about this fight more so than even maybe the Garry Neal fight. I really want Topuria to win. He's probably my favorite fighter right now, if not top 3, 4, 5, whatever. But man, Volkanovski by KO TKO plus 250. I feel on my bones that's what's going to happen. You can try all day to game plan. You can try all day in training camp to work on your opponents and what they're going to do and try to predict it, et cetera, et cetera. But at the end of the day, it's very hard to deviate, especially when you're being challenged, when you're actually fighting, you're actually stressed out and being challenged. It's very hard to do things differently. You oftentimes under stress revert back to the norm. And the norm for Topuria and all of his habits, his traits, his tendencies, and the things that make him great and have gotten him to this point, unfortunately, at this final stage, are now things that are almost liabilities and things that, unfortunately, just how the styles match up play into Volkanovski's strengths. And it's going to be really hard for him to work on things like defending those kicks and those high kicks and those calf kicks without basically castrating his own game plan. What do you think?
I love it, Bobby. I haven't said it yet today, so you know what this is. This is a Nuck If You Buck fight of the card.
Ha ha ha. There we go.
This one I'm going to probably clip at some point because this is going to be prophetic as shit when this comes true. Topuria is going to take the belt from Volkanovski, but not this fight.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
I think he does in Volkanovski, Topuria too. I am on board with you in this one. I am also on Volkanovski. Looking at it, Volkanovski got good kick punch combos, exploding punches. He's got low hands, so he's open to counters, but I mean that's half of the fighters. He wants to stay standing. He's got great endurance, and I worry about Topuria's endurance as he's gone the full 5 just once in his career. Volkanovski being a champion for so long, that's all he does anymore is these 5-round fights. I think Topuria does have a pretty massive wrestling edge, or at least grappling edge over Volkanovski. Topuria, one of the things I saw about him, I also want to say he's got good defensive body movement, but one of the things he does so well is he's got great like body shots. I have him as a body shot expert with his kicks, with his punches. I believe he had like a liver punch on one guy that he just took him to the ground. That's going to be hard on a guy like Volkanovski, and wrestling's going to be hard on a guy like Volkanovski just because Volk is so compact and short.
Yeah.
That
100%.
that body style is just it's not uh it's just exactly the type of body style that is going to affect Topuria. And I think Topuria is great. I really like him too. I think the UFC has great plans for him. And I think Topuria is going to be a really fun guy to watch for time to come. And I really do think he'll probably be champion at some point. Also, with the undefeated, I did want to mention this too. 14-0. Um, we saw Volkanovski. He's lost both fights when he went up, trying to get that double belt. When you lose like that, he's coming back and he's more motivated than ever. Topuria, he's already starting so high. It's one of those things you don't know what you don't know. So I think this is going to be a very good learning lesson for Topuria. That's why I think he's going to get a lot out of this fight. And I think overall, this fight's going to be good for Topuria's career. I think this is going to be one of those fights that kind of launches him to that next level. He hasn't faced a guy like Volk, and I think he's going to learn a lot. I don't know. I think it's either going to be a decision or a knockout. I could see it going to decision and Topuria just being like really gassed and tired at the end and starting to get worked. Or because he'd be in a KO, he gets worked so much that it gets an early stoppage. Not that he gets flatlined, but just a TKO that the ref jumps in. I feel like we're seeing this one very similar.
Yeah, this is probably going to be my haymaker because I see it probably having the best chance of happening. I wanted to say that it was potentially Paulo Costa, but as much as I do think Paulo Costa will win that fight, I think this one in particular, the odds are just good enough and just realistic enough to have that pretty like what's the word I'm looking for here? The stark edge, I guess you could say,
Yeah.
that I look for when it comes to these haymakers, that nice balance of realism, like realistic chance of happening outcome, plus tantalizing win odds, etc. It meets that criteria for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, KO TKO for Volkanovski, but at plus 250, I think that's going to be my haymaker because, as you said, it could either be an accumulation from the volume and being gassed out and being worn out from not being accustomed to 5-round fights, or it could be. See, I lean more towards it could also, unfortunately, and I would hate for this to happen. I don't want it to happen, all that, but like I could also see it being an out cold from a head kick. So those two paths right there make me very confident in it. Excuse me, to make it kind of like also my LL Cool J, because once again, I think people are just sleeping on Volkanovski, and it's something I really want to take advantage of because the rest of the fights on this card, as we talked about before the show, the odds are kind of crappy. Let's be honest. Especially if you're going with the money line, you're going to have to do something really outrageous to kind of compensate for the ridiculous money line on these fights. But yeah, I like it. I like that for Volkanovski. I feel like it's just something that I want to take advantage of because I feel like the odds makers really have it wrong with all the hype that Topuria is riding, and I believe it is warranted. But like you said, just not right now.
Yeah. Absolutely. Bobby, thank you for hopping on, man. You got anything before we get out of here?
Nope, just excited for the fights. Really pumped to watch this card. Follow us along on the socials. Thank you for all your support. Thank you for all your views, everything you do for the community. We greatly appreciate it. Can't do it without you. I know it's cliche, but we mean it. And just keep liking, keep subscribing, watching, follow along. It's a fun ride.
Do everything Bobby just said. And in addition, make sure you guys go over to bettergreen.com. You guys can read some of our articles over there. Bobby's posting stuff. I'm posting stuff. I'll have two more UFC plays out there on premium articles. It's only $1 a month, guys, to get those plays. We are also adding a soccer guy. So we're going to start having soccer content too if you like soccer as well. And please head over to Sharps if you guys haven't already. That's where we post our bets, where we actually have our money on. You guys can see our bets. You guys can tail them straight from the app. Just click the whale tail. It'll take you straight to your sports book. And guys, thank you for watching. Tapping Vegas it has never been better, and we're just going to keep getting better. And we're pretty split. I'm kind of excited to see how this week turns out, Bobby.
I am as well, man. Very excited to see how it plays out. Also, sorry, forgot one last thing. Make sure you like and subscribe to Ian Gary's wife's OnlyFans Brazilian Buns at xxx.com. So please subscribe her. Ian really needs the money, and so does his nutritionist.
We're getting out of here. Thanks for watching, guys. Peace.
Peace.
You better start listening to the Better in Green podcast. You will not regret it. Trust me, trust me, trust me. And hey, I'm Dean Blandino.
Welcome to Better in Green, eh? To Better in Green, eh? To Better in Green, eh? Listening to cash out, that's what it's all about. Come on, let's make cash now. We always on spot and we cover all spot from the bottom to the top, hey. Shout out to Ethan, shout out to Wyatt, shout out to Ben. Welcome to our podcast, Better in Green.